Myrtle's viability as the first E2 has been a subject of contention for basically years at this point. In this video, I'll break down the arguments by both sides and provide my general recommendation on the matter. To provide some context, Myrtle is one of the only 4 stars that people generally claim holds relevance in the late game due to her phenomenal and mostly uncontested DP generation capabilities. This is in contrast with the other 4 stars which are generally more DPS focused and quickly get retired in favor of stronger 6 stars. Due to the restriction of having an E2 unit in order to borrow an E2 support unit, many players recommend E2ing Myrtle because she does not lose her value as much as other 4-star operators as you scale towards late game, and she's also very cheap at around 1/3 of the sanity needed to E2 a 6-star, thereby allowing an E2 support very early on, which can be instrumental for players attempting to clear their first event stages. Essentially, the argument claims that by doing an E2 of Myrtle instead of any other 4-star, you're not wasting sanity. In contrast, any other party would advocate for you to E2 either your strongest 6-star carry early on or an alternative 4-star carry, such as Pinecone or Cutter. It's also important to note that an E2 Myrtle does nothing early game, both relative to herself and relative to other units. The whole point of anyone E2ing her is for S1M3, and nobody in their right mind would be recommending S1M3 to a new player who just done their first E2. So we're working on the basis that the first option will net you a unit that is essentially useless except to borrow some broken E2 from your support list, such as Surda. I believe that the only valid target group to give this recommendation towards are veteran players starting their alternate accounts, or new players who are very confident about clearing the story, or new players who don't care about the gameplay at all and just simply want to copy guides from YouTube. In this situation, it's not an unreasonable claim to make that people who E2 Myrtle first probably can get to the end of an event, whether it be the normal stages or the EX stages, simply by virtue of how strong the support unit becomes. However, the ability to actually farm other event stages is another story altogether. We all know that you can't auto a stage if you cleared it with a support borrow, and actually autoing like at let's say the 7th or the 6th stage with mostly E1 low rarity units combined with what is essentially a useless stat stick will be a huge challenge for new players. On the flip side, an E2 4-star grants about a 50+% increase to their raw damage, not to mention the additional stats which are very useful for actually tanking enemies, especially if you're E2ing a unit such as Cutter. While it is true that 4-star E2s of the DPS variety do drop off very sharply once you start getting 6-star operators, they cost very little sanity relative to an actual 6-star investment and will carry you for the early game, which can last multiple months. In addition, this argument also works to a lesser extent on Myrtle because Psylocke and Elysium are direct upgrades over her, so it's impossible to go with the Myrtle has no competition card. Overall, for 90% plus of the player base, it would be better to simply E2 the strongest 6-star you have if you rerolled, or to E2 a gameplay oriented 4-star such as Cutter, Jay, Pinecone and so on if you are in a rush. Only do Myrtle if you're a veteran player or if you're copying guides. Pretty short one today, but as always have a good one, and I hope you get less of banners than I do.